What's up, house groups? One of my favorite stories is about a kid in college. He was taking a final, and the professor said, "All right, time's up. Everyone pencils down." And this kid kept writing, and the professor was like shocked that the kid didn't listen, and so he said louder, "Everyone pencils down now." And this kid kept writing. Finally, he was the last kid writing, and the professor said, "Excuse me, sir. I will give you 5 seconds to put your pencil down and stop writing, and if you haven't done so, you failed this class." And the kid just kept writing for another couple minutes, and finally, after a few minutes passed, he walked up with his test to the professor's desk, and the professor said, "No, I'm taking the test. You failed the class. I told you to put your pencil down, and you didn't do it." And the kid looked at the professor indignantly and said, "Do you know who I am?" And the professor, at this point, was enraged, and he looked at the kid and said, "No, I don't know who you are, and I don't care." And the kid smiled, grabbed the entire stack of tests off the professor's desk, threw them all on the floor, put his in the middle, mixed them all around, and ran out of the room. I love it. That's a brilliant kid. The thing that always strikes me about that story, other than the ingenuity of getting away with it and not failing class, is that I feel like as I look at my own life, I have a lot more "do you know who I am" moments than deep down I really wish I did. I don't always say it. It's not always one of those times where you rudely say that to someone, but there are so many times in life where pride gets wounded and where you feel disrespected and you just something boils up inside of you and wants to ask that question. Do you know who I am? Do you know what I'm worth? Do you understand my value? And not just in work and not just in public, but in marriage, in parenting, in life. It just happens so much. We struggle with pride. We struggle with it. It's such a real thing in our lives, and we all know pride and summertime come before a fall. It's a bad joke, but that's about as good as my jokes get. But the Bible's pretty clear, right, when it comes to this subject of pride. Over and over and over again, it communicates about pride and humility. The book of Proverbs, chapter 15, verse 33, it says, "Humility comes before honor." Humility comes before honor. And one chapter later, chapter 16, verse 18, it says, "Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall." James in chapter 4, verse 6 tells us, "God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble." And it's not just these three verses, from beginning to end, Genesis to Revelation, we see this idea over and over and over again that God stands in opposition to pride. And God gives grace to humility. When we lower ourselves, God lifts us up. And it becomes clear that this isn't just something God does occasionally. It's not just a feeling or a thought. This is a disposition of God. It's a stayed mindset that God has. And that's because humility is grounded in the character of God. It's who God is. It's why Jesus did what Jesus did. And the fact that we're created in the image of God means that somewhere deep down, even though in our brokenness we struggle with pride, humility is hardwired into us as human beings. It's just part of who God is. It's why Jesus said stuff like, "The first shall be last." Or he looked at his disciples and said, "Listen, you guys, whoever wants to be greatest among you must be the servant. You're going to do it like I did. The master, I didn't come to be served, but to serve. And I want you to live like that. I want you to follow my example." But it's tough. It's tough, for real. If you guys are anything like me, when it comes to this idea of serving, you want to know what the ROI is. How long do I got to go down before this investment pays off and I get lifted up and then I'm the greatest? I'll be last as long as I know I can be first. I'll serve as long as I know at some point I can be the master. I want it to pay off, and whenever it doesn't, if I serve somebody and I don't immediately get, some reward from God, or God doesn't make my life better. I, get really frustrated. But the thing is, like, God just sees it through this entirely different lens than we do. And for him, the bottom is the top. The bottom is the finish line and not the starting line. It's why God has always related to this world that he created in the way that he has. It's why the maker of all things stands at the ready. He is, was, and has always been on high alert to give himself and sacrifice himself for the sake of his creatures, for you and me. It's why Jesus came and stepped out of heaven, stepped out of his divinity, and took on humanity and gave his life so that we could be forgiven and set free and reconciled. That's mind-blowing stuff, that God would do that for us after our rebellion, after our rejection of him. But it's who God is. And I can't help but wonder what would happen in our world if we lived like that. If we tapped into that space deep inside our souls where humility is hardwired into us, to the God image in us, and said, okay, I am willing to give up everything to live like Jesus. If we just decided, hey, we are the church of Jesus Christ in the world, no one can outserve us. Nobody. It can't be done. We will not be outserved. We'll go do grunt work in places where no one else will go. We can't be outserved. One of my favorite episodes of The Office ever. I don't know if you've seen it or if you love it as much as I do, but two of the characters, Dwight and Andy, they kind of have a serve off. Like, I forget which one starts it, but one of them does something nice for the other one. And then the other one does something nice back, and they both have this compulsion deep inside of them to not be owing anybody anything. Like, they both have to have the last serve and the last kind deed, and they end up bringing like food for the whole office, and they're just trying to outserve each other because neither one of them will be indebted to the other. They have to win. They have to be last. Man, what if the church lived like that? I mean, those two guys are crazy. They're nuts. Don't be Dwight and don't be Andy. But what if we decided we have to win at this serving thing? We will give because Jesus gave. Man, I think in the process, we would find that the world buys into the message of Jesus a whole lot more. Like, when the people who are following Jesus live like him and love like him, we're going to find a world that's more responsive to our message. And two, we'd find that greatness and that meaning and that significance and that purpose that our hearts are deeply longing for. That we've been chasing through all kinds of different things. That we've been chasing through power and glory and wealth and riches and fame and not finding there. I think we'd find it in humility. And so I challenged all of us this week. My challenge Sunday and to each of our house groups is find one person who you have power over or influence over in some way, shape, or form, in some space that you occupy. Find one person, maybe even someone you would have considered beneath you, and find a way to humble yourself in order to lift them up, even if it means doing a task you thought was beneath you. If nothing was beneath Jesus, nothing's beneath us. Like, find a way to lift somebody up and see what God does through it. And pray too about God helping us and facilitating in us this journey away from the path to greatness that our world has given us that fails, towards the path to greatness, which leads straight to the bottom, which leads to humility that Jesus gave us. Pray that God would do that in our hearts. I said it in the message on Sunday. I'll say it again. Like, the word humility comes from the Latin humus. It means dirt. It's common. You can't be too common or too dirty to be used by God. You can only be too